They said it while I was in the room. They didn't even whisper. Lisa's voice cut through the hallway like a knife through soft fruit. She's just always here, eating, sitting, breathing like she's part of this house. But she's not. And Lewis didn't say a word. Not one word. I was lying on the couch, the blanket pulled up to my chest, eyes closed. They thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I was listening. Listening to my own son let his wife call me a burden and say nothing to stop it. The tea on the side table had gone cold. My slippers had slipped halfway off, my back aching from the angle. But I didn't move. If I moved, they'd know I heard. If I sat up, I'd have to see their faces, their forced little smiles and awkward glances and, oh, we didn't mean it like that. They meant it exactly like that, and I was done. The night settled around the house like dust. I heard the television turn back on, some laughing show with canned applause. I heard the clink of wine glasses. I heard Lisa's footsteps up the stairs, sharp, like her voice. And then the quiet thud of the bedroom door. I didn't move. Not until the house had gone completely silent, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath. Then I sat up. The living room was tidy. My knitting basket sat in the corner where I always kept it, half a scarf still on the needles. A framed photo of Lewis as a boy, toothy grin, scraped knee, perched on the shelf like a memory no one had time for anymore. The hallway light was still on. Always was. Lisa liked to keep it on for ambiance, she said. I always thought it made the place look like a dentist's office. I stood, slowly. My knees cracked. I didn't wince. The pain was familiar, like an old friend who overstayed their welcome but still knew all your secrets. I walked to the kitchen, boiled water, made myself a fresh cup of tea. Mint. Always mint. Paul used to grow it in our garden before the strokes came. I carried the cup back to my little corner and sat. Didn't turn on the TV, didn't read, just sat and sipped and let the bitterness of their words settle into my bones. She's always here, eating, breathing, like I was something invasive. Like I hadn't once sold my condo and given the down payment to help them buy this house. Like I hadn't helped raise their children, run their errands, folded their laundry when Lisa got too busy. Like I hadn't been the one who made soup when Lewis had the flu, who picked up their dog from the vet when Lisa forgot. Like I wasn't family. I thought of all the times I stayed quiet. When she said I shouldn't use strong-smelling lotions because the baby didn't like it. When she moved my sewing things to the garage. When she told me not to sit in the reading chair because it throws off the aesthetic. I remembered them all. And still, I said nothing. Until tonight. Tonight, something shifted. Not loudly, not with anger, but with a kind of slow, heavy certainty. Like the moment you realize the rain isn't going to stop and you start walking anyway. They thought I was weak because I didn't argue. They thought I was grateful just to have a room. They thought I had nowhere else to go. They were wrong. And I was going to show them just how wrong. The next morning, Lisa greeted me in the kitchen with her usual sugary tone. "Morning, Gary. Sleep okay?" I nodded. Lewis looked up from his phone. "You want eggs?" "No, thank you," I said. My voice sounded even, steady. Too steady, maybe. They moved around the kitchen like I wasn't there. I sipped my tea, same as always. Only this time I watched. I watched how Lisa avoided my gaze, how Lewis rubbed the back of his neck. I watched how she didn't refill my mug. Little things. I had always noticed them. I just never let myself admit what they meant. But now I had. And now I was making a plan. The morning passed like most do in that house. Politely, impersonally, like everyone was following some unspoken choreography. Lisa hummed while chopping fruit, her knife clicking against the cutting board in a rhythm too sharp to be casual. Louis scrolled his phone, occasionally grunting in response to something on the news. No one looked at me for longer than a blink. I finished my tea, rinsed the mug, dried it, and placed it gently back on the hook by the sink. That hook had been empty when I moved in. I brought the mug with me. Pale blue ceramic, slightly chipped, a birthday gift from my sister in '83. No one ever asked why I didn't use their cups. No one ever asked anything, really. I walked back to my room. The guest room, they called it, though I'd been there 4 years, and sat on the edge of the bed. It was always a little too firm. The mattress was one of those orthopedic kinds Lisa said would be better for your back. She didn't ask. She just replaced the old one while I was out at the market one day. I came home and found the door open, the sheets changed, my quilt folded at the foot like it didn't belong anymore. That day, I said thank you. I said it even though it made my back worse, not better. Because saying thank you was easier than explaining pain to someone who didn't want to hear it. But now, I wasn't thanking anyone. I opened the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out the small notebook I kept for grocery lists, quotes, reminders. I flipped past the pages that said things like, "Don't forget allergy meds for Wyatt," and "Lisa likes oat milk now." Toward the back, I'd written something else, months ago. Title, 17 Greenbrier Lane. Name, Geraldine R. Marshall. It was the deed, my name, only mine. When I sold my condo, the tiny one-bedroom with a crooked balcony and creaky pipes, but a view of the lake I loved, I hadn't just handed over the check. I'd done things right. Transferred what needed transferring. Kept the legal stuff clean. Louis never asked about the paperwork. Lisa said they'd figure out the mortgage details later. They didn't ask because they assumed. They assumed an old woman wouldn't keep anything in her own name. They assumed I needed them more than they needed me. But I didn't. And I had the documents to prove it. I closed the notebook and placed it carefully in my purse. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to an old number I hadn't dialed in years. Robert Chan, Paul's friend from college. He'd done our taxes for decades before moving to the coast. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Jerry?" "Hi, Rob. I have a favor to ask." "I'm all ears." "I need someone to look over a deed and tell me what's still mine." There was a pause, then a quiet, steady answer. "Bring it in tomorrow morning." The second call was to a taxi company. I didn't want Louis offering to drive me anywhere. I didn't want to owe them another ounce of explanation. At dinner, Lisa made lentil soup and salad. She served it with a flourish, proud of the anti-inflammatory recipe she found online. She didn't offer me croutons. "Too much sodium," she said, with a tight smile. Louis passed the breadbasket to his son, Wyatt, without looking up. We ate in near silence. No one mentioned the way I barely touched my food. No one noticed that I'd packed my purse more carefully that day, or that my expression had changed. Wyatt was the only one who looked at me. Really looked. He was 8, with dark curls and a twitchy smile. He whispered across the table, "Nana, you okay?" I smiled. "I'm just thinking, sweetheart." "About what?" I paused. "About who I used to be." He blinked, nodded solemnly, and spooned more soup into his mouth. After dinner, I cleared the table. Lisa didn't object. She never did. She liked that I did the dishes. Said I still had good hands for that sort of thing. As I stood at the sink, hands in warm suds, I thought about what tomorrow would look like, about what it meant to take something back without making a scene. about how power sometimes hides in silence, not the passive kind, but the kind that plans, that waits, that watches. I dried my hands, turned off the kitchen light, and walked down the hall to my room. It was the last night I would ever sleep under this roof as a guest. I didn't sleep much that night. Sleep had become something shallow in that house anyway, something you did with one ear open, one eye half shut, ready for the sound of footsteps or the soft thud of passive judgment. But that night, I wasn't waiting. I was remembering. That's what old women do, isn't it? When the world forgets us, we remember ourselves. I remembered the years when it was just me and Louis in that cramped two-bedroom in Joliet. I worked nights at the pharmacy back then, ringing up cough syrup and aspirin for tired mothers and hungover college kids. By day, I watched Louis sleep, curled up on the couch, his knees poking through the holes in his pajamas. He used to say, "Mama, I'll buy you a big house one day." I always laughed and said, "Just make your bed first." He never did. Paul had died young, a sudden heart attack, 2 weeks before Louis's 10th birthday. I still remember the way the funeral flowers smelled, too sweet and sticky. After that, everything fell on me, and I carried it. I didn't remarry. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to explain my grief to anyone else. Some things are meant to be held, not shared. So I held everything: the bills, the PTA meetings, the leaky sink, the broken heater, the tears that came when Louis broke his arm falling from the monkey bars. I remember once pawning my engagement ring to pay for his school field trip to Washington, D.C. I never got the ring back. He never asked how I managed it. I never told him. That was love. Years later, when he met Lisa, he brought her home like she was a prize ribbon from a contest I didn't know he entered. She was all neat hair and narrow smiles, offering to help with the dishes, but never actually doing them. She called me Miss Marshall for the first 6 months. I didn't correct her. Eventually, she settled on Jerry, never Mum. That was fine. Not everyone gets the privilege. When Louis called one day, voice full of excitement, to say they'd found a house but needed help with the down payment, I didn't hesitate. I sold the condo, my condo, my quiet, sunlit little place with the ivy that crept up the side windows and the mailbox that stuck every time it rained. I sold it, handed them the check, and moved into their guest room without asking for a thing in return. "We're family," Louis had said. "Of course you'll live with us." And I believed him. I believed him when Lisa said, "You'll always have a place here." I believed her when she smiled and said, "We're so lucky to have you." For a while, it even felt true. They let me decorate the bathroom, seafoam green, like my old one. They let me keep a few potted herbs on the back patio. They even asked my opinion on paint colours for the guest bath. It was nice, until it wasn't. The rules started small. No shoes in the hallway. No leaving tea bags in the sink. No burning candles because the scent lingered. Then bigger ones. Don't use the washer on weekends. Don't invite old friends over. Don't cook after 7. The smell carries. I kept nodding, adjusting, shrinking. The guest room closet filled with bins of their winter clothes. My sewing machine was moved to the garage. My birthday was forgotten one year. They said they were busy with work. I said I understood. And I did. Too much. But all those small kindnesses I gave, the packed lunches, the ironed shirts, the soup during flu season, none of them earned me a place. They earned me utility. A housemaid with no paycheck. A grandmother with no say. Still, I stayed. Because love, for some of us, is a quiet service. And I had always served, until now. That morning, I put on my best trousers, the navy ones with the elastic waistband that didn't pinch. A simple blouse, No perfume. Lisa hated it. I packed my notebook, my ID, and an old photo of Paul holding Lewis as a baby, just in case I needed to remember why I'd done it all. The taxi arrived 5 minutes early. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I didn't need to. When I slid into the back seat, the driver asked, "Where to?" I told him the address of Robert's office. "And what are we doing today, Mum?" I looked out the window at the rows of identical houses. Taking back what's mine. Robert's office hadn't changed in 20 years. The same chipped door frame, same dusty blinds pulled halfway down, same clunky filing cabinet in the corner that rattled when you opened it too fast. He still brewed his coffee too strong and still kept a tin of mints no one ever touched. He looked older, of course. We both did. But there was a steadiness in him I remembered. The kind of man who read every line twice before signing anything, even birthday cards. He pulled the folder toward him and adjusted his glasses. "This is the original deed?" I nodded. He flipped through the pages, lips moving as he read. "Geraldine Rose Marshall, sole owner. Title transferred via quitclaim deed in 2019. Not mortgaged, not leased, not encumbered." He looked up at me. "This house is yours. All of it." I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I just nodded and said, "I want to sell." He blinked. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I was when I signed it over to myself 4 years ago." He chuckled, not unkindly. "I remember Paul saying once, 'If anyone ever tries to push Jerry around, she'll push back harder. Just not with fists. With paperwork.' I hadn't thought about Paul in days. That realization hit me sideways. For years, he'd been in every breath, every routine. But lately, I'd been so wrapped up in surviving that I'd let him fade. He would have hated that. But he would have liked today. "I don't want an open house," I said. "No signs in the yard, no fuss." "Private showings?" I nodded. "Any price floor?" "Fair market value, nothing less. But I don't want to drag it out. I want clean, fast, and quiet." Robert scribbled notes. "I'll draft the listing documents. You'll need a realtor." "I already have someone in mind. Her name's Adina Lopez. Young, but sharp. Her mother used to work with me at the library." He looked mildly surprised. "You've been planning this?" "Not at first. But then I started listening." He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't need to. I left his office with a copy of the paperwork and walked 2 blocks to Adina's office. A small, bright space tucked between a bakery and a dog grooming salon. It smelled like vanilla and ambition. She wore practical shoes and no perfume. And when I handed her the folder, she didn't ask if I was sure. She just said, "I'll handle it personally." That afternoon, I sat on a bench outside the house. Not in it. I couldn't. Not after what I'd heard. Not after what they'd said. From the outside, it looked peaceful. A clean walkway, a porch swing Lisa never used, potted succulents arranged just so. You'd think love lived there. You'd think family filled the rooms. But I knew better. Lewis came home first. I watched him from behind my sunglasses. He parked in the driveway, glanced at his phone, barely looked at the house as he walked inside. Then Lisa, 10 minutes later, in her oversized SUV, groceries in the back. They didn't see me. That was fine. I wasn't there to be seen anymore. I was there to take notes. Adina texted me at 7:42 that evening. "Photos taken. Listing draft complete. Sending for your review." I replied, "Send it." By 10:30 p.m., I had approved everything. By 11 the house was scheduled to go live the next morning. I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't dread. It was anticipation. At breakfast, I sat at the table as usual. Lisa served eggs. Didn't ask how I liked them. She never did. Lewis scrolled his phone. "Market's crazy," he muttered. "Houses in our zip code going for insane numbers." "Really?" I said, sipping my tea. He nodded. "It's wild." Lisa looked up. "We should refinance again, pull some equity, maybe redo the floors?" I chewed my toast. Didn't say a word. I wondered how long it would take them to notice. Not long. By 1:15 p.m., Adina had already had 3 serious inquiries. By 4:30, the listing had been viewed over 500 times. At 6:02 p.m., she called. "There are 2 cash buyers ready to see it tonight. I can walk them through virtually." "Do it," I said. "And if they're serious, bring me the offers. I'm ready." At 9 p.m., as I rinsed my mug and set it gently back on the hook, Lewis knocked on my door. "You okay, Mom?" I turned. "I'm fine." "You've been quiet." "Have I?" He shifted. "You know we appreciate you, right?" I tilted my head. He didn't finish the sentence. Just stood there. I waited. Then he said, "Anyway, let us know if you need anything," and walked away. I closed my door, sat on my bed, pulled out the folder again, ran my finger over the seal, the date, the ink. My house, not Lisa's, not Lewis's, mine. And they were about to find out what that meant. I wasn't in the room when they found out. I was in the garden. My garden. The one Lisa said was too messy for her minimalist patio. I'd moved the pots back out that morning. Thyme, rosemary, a struggling lavender bush in a chipped blue planter. It was warm, the kind of sun that sits on your shoulders without asking permission. The door slammed. I heard it all the way outside. "Lewis." Her voice was high, thin, laced with panic. "Did you see this? Did you see this?" I leaned over the rosemary and pinched a sprig between my fingers, breathed in. "What is it?" "The house. It's listed. It's online." A pause. Then, "No, I'm not joking, Lewis. I know what our house looks like. It's our address, our kitchen, our bedroom, our everything." I heard his footsteps before I saw him. Heavy, unsure, the way he used to walk when he'd broken the neighbor's window with a baseball as a boy. He stepped onto the patio, looked at me like I might vanish. "Mom?" "Yes?" Did you list the house?" I wiped my hands on my slacks. "Yes." He blinked. "But why?" Lisa appeared behind him, her arms crossed tight, mouth already moving. "You can't just do that. You live here. We live here. You can't just—" "I can," I said. "I own it." Lewis looked stunned. Lisa looked furious. "No, that's not. There must be some mistake. We thought—" "You assumed," I said. "No mistake. I never transferred the title. Not to either of you." "You said this was for the family," she snapped. And it was, until the family decided I was a burden. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Lewis stepped forward. "We didn't mean it like that." I met his eyes. "I was awake, Lewis." He opened his mouth, closed it. Lisa's face was all motion now, blinking too much, adjusting her sleeve, crossing and uncrossing her arms. "You can't just throw us out." "I didn't throw anyone," I said. "I'm selling a house. You happen to live in it." "But where are we supposed to go?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "That's your decision to make." Lisa turned to Lewis. "You're going to let her do this? To your own family?" His silence was the same as it had always been. Not resistance, not agreement, just absence. I walked past them, into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. My hand didn't shake. The next morning, Adina called. "We have 3 offers. 2 are all cash. One's from a woman named Nora, divorced, no contingencies. She said, and I quote, "I just want peace." I smiled. That's the one. By 3 p.m., I had signed. By sunset, the house was under contract. That night, Lewis knocked on my door again. I didn't answer. At dinner, no one spoke. Lisa served salad. The dressing was wrong, too bitter. She didn't notice. Wyatt watched us carefully, like the air had changed, and no one told him the new rules. He poked at his food. "Nana?" "Yes, baby." "Are you mad?" I paused. "No," I said. "Just done." Lisa stood up abruptly and walked out of the room. Her plate clattered in the sink seconds later. Lewis cleared his throat. "You could have talked to us." "I did," I said. "For years. You just weren't listening." He nodded slowly, looked down at his lap. "You're really going to make us leave?" "I'm not making you do anything," I said. "I'm leaving. You just didn't see it coming." I stood, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out to the garden again. The rosemary smelled stronger that night. Maybe it was the air. Maybe it was just me, breathing different now. They started packing quietly. That's what surprised me most. No shouting, no pleading, just boxes. The ones Lisa kept in the attic labelled seasonal, now filled with her real life. Clothes, shoes, framed prints of beaches they'd never been to. I watched from the garden window as she taped each one shut, like she was sealing a wound. Lewis didn't speak to me that whole day. He moved slowly through the house, picking things up like they weighed more than they should. His face looked pale, not from anger, but from something older, like a boy who just realized the store closed and he'd forgotten to buy the milk. Wyatt sensed it too. He stopped running in the hallway. He stopped asking for cookies. That night, he came into my room with a flashlight and a storybook, the way he used to when he had nightmares. "Can I sleep here, Nana?" I nodded and held out the blanket. He curled next to me without a word, his little body warm and still. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "Are we in trouble?" I brushed the hair from his forehead. "No, sweetheart. You're just waking up." In the morning, Lisa stood at the counter pretending to check her email while Lewis poured coffee like it was a task that required prayer. I walked in, made my tea, and didn't wait for a greeting. Lisa finally broke the silence. "So, what's the plan, Jerry?" "My name is Geraldine," I said. She blinked. I turned to face her. "And the plan is already in motion." She laughed once, sharp and low. "You think you're teaching us some kind of lesson?" I shook my head. "No. I think I'm finally learning mine." Lewis set his cup down too hard. Coffee splashed the counter. "This was supposed to be home." "It was," I said, "until I stopped being welcome." He rubbed his face. "You think this is easy for us?" "No," I said. "I think it's finally fair." That night, Adina called again. "The buyers want to close within 5 days. They'll cover everything. No inspections, no delay." "Make it happen," I said. I didn't tell anyone. I just started packing. Not much, really. My old photo albums, my knitting basket, the 3 tea mugs I liked. A few clothes, 2 scarves, and Paul's sweater, the one he wore on our last New Year's Eve together. When Lisa saw me with the suitcase, she scoffed. "Where will you even go?" I zipped the bag. "Somewhere that doesn't ask me to be less just to be tolerated." Lewis followed me to the door. "Please," he said, "don't do this." "You already did," I said. "You just never thought I'd notice." The taxi arrived on time. The driver helped with the bag. Wyatt waved from the window, confused, a little sad. I didn't cry. I smiled. As the car pulled away, Lisa stood on the porch, arms folded, watching like someone who realized too late that control isn't love. Lewis didn't come out. He stayed inside. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, but I didn't feel small. I felt new. I checked into a small suite downtown. Clean, quiet, nothing fancy. The kind of place where no one asks your age or your story, only if you want decaf or regular in the lobby. That night, I opened the window. The city lights flickered like they were applauding. I sat on the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Good night, Paul. I'm all right now." I didn't sleep much that night either, but it was a different kind of restlessness. Not dread, not ache, just the soft, electric hum of something shifting, like a train pulling away from a station and finally picking up speed. Morning came soft and grey. I walked down to the corner cafe, the kind that serves 2 strong coffee and bagels wrapped in wax paper, and sat by the window with a notepad. I wrote one word at the top of the page: begin. I wasn't sure what I meant yet, but I knew it was time. By mid-morning, Adina called. "We're clear. Funds wired. Ownership transfers tomorrow. They'll get notice of termination within 24 hours. I thanked her. She paused. "You okay, Ms. Marshall?" I smiled. Getting there. She didn't press. That afternoon, I visited a building I hadn't seen in years. An old Victorian duplex, 2 neighborhoods over, run down but solid. It had a porch that needed sanding and a garden overrun with wild ivy. I saw it once when Paul was still alive. We'd walked by, hand in hand. He said, "That place has bones. Someone should love it again." I stood in front of it now, older, alone, but not lost. "Maybe that someone is me," I whispered. The next day, while Lewis and Lisa were still arguing over voicemail and calling lawyers who couldn't help them, I put in an offer. All cash, no contingencies, close in a week. The agent looked at me like I was mad. "Most women your age look for retirement communities." "I'm not most women," I said. He didn't argue. Within 72 hours, it was mine. Just like that. That night, I sat cross-legged on the carpeted floor of the master bedroom, measuring sunlight through the windows. I opened my notebook again. "The porch house," I wrote. Underneath, "No one here earns their worth. They already have it." The week passed fast. I furnished the place slowly, intentionally. A kettle on every floor. A bookshelf in every room. No rules, no signs, no locked cabinets. I wanted it to feel like someone had finally said, "Stay. You don't have to explain yourself." I wasn't building a shelter. I was building a memory you could walk into. The first resident was a woman named Trudy, 69, thrown out by her daughter-in-law after a hip replacement. The second was Maureen, widowed twice, laughed like a girl, and cooked stew better than anyone I knew. Then came Ruth, quiet and stern, with strong hands and deep grief behind her eyes. They came quietly, but the house filled with sound. Footsteps, boiling kettles, late-night conversations. Laughter returned to my ears like it remembered the way. I told them nothing at first, just that I'd found a place. But when they learned what I'd done, how I'd sold the house out from under the people who called me a burden, they didn't gasp. They nodded. They understood. "You didn't do it to hurt them," Maureen said. "No," I said. "I did it to stop them from hurting me." Ruth placed a blanket on my shoulders one night as we sat on the porch. "They made you invisible," she said, "so you made yourself undeniable." I didn't answer. I just squeezed her hand. That Sunday, I made mint tea and set it out for the women. The porch glowed golden in the afternoon light. Trudy hummed softly. Maureen read aloud from the classifieds. Ruth fixed the crooked bird feeder. No one asked for silence. No one tiptoed. No one begged to belong. It was the quietest, most beautiful rebellion I had ever known. The official transfer of ownership hit their mailbox on a Thursday, a large white envelope, hand-delivered by a neutral courier. Inside, one signed, notarized document stating the sale was complete, the title had changed, and the occupants, not tenants, not family, just occupants, had 7 days to vacate. The envelope bore my full name, Geraldine R. Marshall. Not Mom, not Jerry, just the legal owner of the house they thought was theirs. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. Adina called later, said a neighbor had spotted Lisa on the porch, phone in one hand, envelope in the other, pacing like someone trying to summon a storm. She kept saying, "She can't do this. She can't do this," Adina said, almost amused. But she already had. I nodded. She just didn't know who she was dealing with. Calls started again. Lewis tried first, no voicemail, then Lisa, then both. By the time the sun dipped low behind the buildings outside my new window, I had 13 missed calls. No message said, "I'm sorry." None said, "Thank you." Only panic. Only control, slipping through their fingers. I turned my phone off. Peace doesn't answer panic. At the porch house, Ruth was teaching Trudy how to crochet. Maureen was slow dancing with herself in the living room to a song from 1972. I sipped my tea and sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, watching them all come back to life. That night, I lay in bed and thought of the moment Paul handed me the keys to our first home. "It's not big," he said, "but it's ours, and no one gets to decide if we belong in it." Now I understood. The next morning, the courier returned to the old house with a follow-up envelope. Formal notice of tenancy termination. Lisa signed for it with a trembling hand. A neighbor told Adina she stood in the doorway for 20 minutes after, like someone trying to memorize a life before it vanished. They still didn't believe it was over. They thought I'd change my mind, thought I'd drive up and take it all back. They didn't understand. I already had. A few days later, Adina received a voicemail. "This is Lisa Marshall," the voice said. "There's been a mistake. That house belongs to my husband's family. My mother-in-law is elderly. She's confused. I'd like to speak to someone about reversing this." Adina called me. "I assume you don't want me to respond?" I took a slow sip of tea. "No. But if you must, remind her whose name is on the deed." Adina sent a brief email. "All documents verified, signed, and filed with the county. The seller acted with full legal capacity and authority. The transaction is closed. No further contact is necessary." Silence followed. Not apology, not remorse, just the quiet collapse of a bluff that failed. By that evening, the house I had once cleaned and gardened and been erased in was no longer mine. But more importantly, it was no longer hers, and that felt just right. I thought that would be the end of it, but people like Lisa don't vanish, they flare. 3 days after the move-out notice arrived, I was setting out teacups on the porch, mismatched porcelain from every thrift shop in town, when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it ring, then again, and again. 20 minutes later, a voicemail. Lisa's voice, cracking under the weight of disbelief. "You can't do this. We live here. Are you losing your mind? Call me back, please. This isn't funny." There was something in that last word, "please," that sounded less like regret and more like bargaining. It never once crossed her lips that she'd crossed a line, only that I had finally responded. That night, Lewis called twice. No message. Just silence turned digital, the kind that waits for the old version of me to pick up. The one who smoothed things over, who apologized just for being in the room. I didn't call back. I didn't even flinch. By now, the rumors had started. Adina texted me. Someone from their neighborhood called asking if you were okay. Words getting around. Good. By midweek, the gossip had reached a strange rhythm. She sold the house? Are they being evicted? No, it was never theirs. Can you believe it? Her own son. They didn't say my name, but they said hers. Lisa Marshall, the daughter-in-law who talked too loud at barbecues and too sharply in grocery aisles, now boxed up and moving out under a cloud of stunned whispers. The day they loaded the moving truck, I wasn't there. I was at the farmer's market with Ruth and Maureen, picking out herbs for the new garden beds. But Adina sent a photo. A pair of expensive suitcases, overstuffed. Lisa on the porch, arms crossed. Lewis standing by the car, eyes hollow. Wyatt sitting on the step, silent. No one smiling. No one speaking. Later that night, I imagined Lisa scrolling through her phone in some rented condo, searching listings with one hand and rage texting with the other. She'd packed for a temporary setback. She hadn't packed for consequences. At the porch house, I brewed chamomile and sat with Trudy by the window. She was mending a hem on a nightgown that belonged to her mother. "Feels good," she said, nodding toward the room. I looked. Soft light, quiet breathing, the air full of lavender and old stories. "It does," I said. The house had started to feel like something sacred, not holy, not polished, but deeply real, where no one had to prove they were still useful, where your silence wasn't mistaken for surrender. The next day, another knock at the gate. I checked the monitor. Lisa. No makeup, no sunglasses, just her. She didn't press the buzzer. She just stood there, eyes red. She looked up at the camera. And then, for the first time since this all began, she said the word. "Sorry." It came out soft, crooked, a little too late. I didn't move, didn't unlock the gate, didn't speak. She stood there for another minute, then turned, walked back to the car, and drove away. Ruth came up beside me. "Friend of yours?" I shook my head. Not anymore. We stood there for a while, letting the silence hold us. And for once, I didn't feel like someone who had lost. I felt like someone who had lived. The house was quiet now, not the kind of quiet that follows tension, but the kind that follows choice. Every room in the porch house felt like it had exhaled. That week, I moved my things into the smallest bedroom, not because it was less, but because it was mine. The walls were pale yellow, the windows narrow but high. I put my chair by the one that faced east so I could watch the morning. I hung one photo on the wall. Paul holding Lewis as a baby, both of them looking half surprised by joy. I didn't add anything else. I didn't need decoration. I needed space that told the truth. On Thursday, Adina brought over a small gift, a plant, hardy and stubborn. She said it reminded her of you, Ruth joked. I watered it and placed it in the hallway, right outside the front room. It took to the light immediately. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. "Mum?" "Lewis." I didn't say anything. I wanted to talk. Still, I waited. "We're in a rental now," he continued. "Short term. Lisa's not doing great. Wyatt misses you." His voice cracked slightly. "I miss you too." I took a slow breath. "Why are you calling?" "I don't know," he said. "Maybe I just realized. Maybe I should have said something sooner." "You should have," I said. "I know." A long pause. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. "It didn't go anywhere," I said. "It was always here. You just didn't see it." Another pause. I guess I thought you'd always be there, that no matter what, you'd keep quiet? He didn't answer. I continued. You let her decide who I was. You watched it happen. And you said nothing. I thought I was keeping the peace. You were keeping your comfort. He started to say something, then stopped. I'm sorry, Mum. This time I believed he meant it. But belief doesn't always mean return. I'm not angry, I said, but I'm not coming back. I'm not asking you to, he said. I don't know how to fix it. You don't. Silence again. But I don't hate you, I said. I just remembered I have choices too. He sniffed, a soft sound, but not theatrical. Is there anything you need? No, I said. I finally have what I need. We said goodbye quietly. No drama, no promises. Just a small ending, or maybe a beginning, but not the kind you chase. After I hung up, Ruth came to my door with a slice of cake. Figured you could use something sweet, she said. I took it, sat by the window, watched the street fade into dusk. The phone didn't ring again that night, and I didn't wait for it to. There's something strange about freedom when it finally arrives. It doesn't shout. It doesn't come wrapped in clarity or fanfare. It just slips in like morning light, quiet and certain, and you realize, oh, I'm not waiting anymore. At the porch house, the rhythm had settled. We took turns with the laundry, shared grocery runs. Ruth insisted on organizing the spice rack, alphabetically, of course. Maureen baked bread twice a week. Trudy was crocheting slippers for everyone, even Roland, the handyman who now stayed in the converted garage when he wasn't fixing cabinet hinges or tuning the radio. There was no hierarchy, no pecking order. No one said, you owe. No one asked, what do you even do all day? We just lived, together, with room. I spent most mornings on the porch with tea and my notebook. I didn't write much, just observations, bits of memory, names I didn't want to forget. Sometimes I wrote numbers, not to keep score, but to remind myself of what I had once carried without acknowledgement. One morning, I sat with the notebook open and counted. 1 used car purchased for Lewis in 1998. 2 hospital bills paid without being asked. 3 months of rent covered during his layoff. 1 down payment on the house they just got evicted from. Too many dinners to count, all of it unspoken, all of it invisible until I stopped pretending it didn't matter. That afternoon, a knock at the gate. I checked the camera. Lewis. Alone. He looked different. Smaller, somehow. Like life had pressed on him for the first time, and he didn't know how to stand under it. I opened the gate, but not wide. Hi, Mum, he said. I didn't answer. I'm not here to fix anything. I know I can't. I wanted to see you. I nodded once. He stepped inside the garden, looked around. This place is beautiful. It's peaceful, I said. There's a difference. He smiled sadly. You made this. I did. He sat on the edge of the porch step, like he used to when he scraped his knees as a kid. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About that night. About what I didn't say. You said enough, I said. By not saying anything. He winced. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. That's because you didn't want to know. He nodded slowly. You're right. I sat beside him, let the silence stretch. Lisa's gone, he said finally. She left, took Wyatt to her mother's, said she needed space. I didn't react. I think she expected me to chase her. Did you? He shook his head. I think I was already gone, long before the house was. That part surprised me, but only a little. I thought I could protect both of you, he said. by not choosing sides. You chose, I said. You just didn't admit it. Another pause. I want to do better, he said. Not to win you back, just to stop losing myself. That was the first honest thing I'd heard him say in years. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. It was a drawing. Wyatt's handwriting scrawled along the top. Nana's house. Stick figures. A crooked porch, 4 women. A dog that looked suspiciously like Roland's. And me in the middle, holding a teacup. I smiled. He drew it from memory, Lewis said. Said you looked like a queen. I folded the paper and tucked it into my notebook. He's always been good at seeing the truth. Lewis looked down at his hands. I don't expect anything, he said. I just wanted to say thank you for everything I never said thank you for. I believed him. But that didn't mean I let him stay. When he stood to leave, I didn't stop him. I just said, live better. That's all the repayment I need. And for once, he didn't argue. After he left, I sat on the porch a long time, holding that folded drawing like it might dissolve if I blinked. It had been years since Lewis gave me anything without a condition attached. And yet there it was, a crayon version of me, smiling. Inside the house, Maureen was setting out dinner plates. Ruth was correcting Roland's pronunciation of oregano. Trudy was laughing at something none of us had heard. The smell of garlic and tomatoes drifted into the hallway like a memory someone had reheated. I didn't move. I just breathed it in. Later, when the dishes were washed and the radio played soft jazz from the windowsill, I sat with Ruth in the den. She was knitting. I was sipping chamomile. You all right? She asked, not looking up. I nodded. He came by. She raised an eyebrow. I told him to live better. She smirked. That's crueler than slamming a door. It wasn't meant to be cruel, I said. I know. That's why it worked. That night, I slept for 9 hours straight. No dreams, no tossing. Just the kind of rest that happens when you finally stop waiting for someone to understand you. The next morning, I walked through the house and noticed something. The silence had changed. It wasn't thick, it wasn't heavy. It was light, like air, like space. We'd started planting again. Roland found a patch near the back fence that caught just enough sun. Maureen had basil sprouting in coffee cans. Ruth wanted green beans. Trudy insisted on marigolds. For the bugs, she said, like it was obvious. I bought paint, soft colours, pale greens and dusty rose. We took turns brushing walls, taping corners, moving furniture. The house began to look like women lived there, not just stayed, but really lived. One afternoon, Ruth stood in the doorway of the kitchen and said, You know what this is, don't you? What? This is what they thought they were keeping you from. I didn't answer. I just looked around, the kettle whistling, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle on the dining table, someone humming out of tune upstairs, the scent of lemon oil and hand soap. Peace. It didn't look like revenge. It didn't feel like justice. It just felt like enough. That night, I went to my room and opened the old notebook, the same one I used to keep grocery lists and track birthdays. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, The Porch House, Year 1. 4 women, 2 raised beds, and a kitchen that never stays clean. That's what healing looks like. Then I added another line. Quiet isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of fear. I closed the notebook and turned out the light. I didn't need anything else. The porch house had a way of collecting people. Not in crowds, not loudly, just one at a time. Someone would come by with a delivery, or a question, or a repair, and stay a little longer than they needed to. Sometimes they'd linger on the porch, ask if the kettle was on, and almost always, it was. One Tuesday, a woman named Evelyn came by to drop off a donation, a box of teacups and old novels. She said her daughter didn't have room for them in the new condo. She stayed for 2 hours. By Friday, she'd asked if there was a room. We didn't ask for resumes. We asked if she wanted sugar in her tea. She cried. Then she moved into the yellow room with the lace curtains. It wasn't a shelter. It wasn't a care home. It was a choice. That same week, we hosted our first porch supper. Long table, too many chairs, mismatched plates. Ruth made her famous roast chicken. Roland baked bread. Trudy played music from her phone. Soft, shaky jazz that somehow made everyone feel young. We lit candles, not fancy ones, just the kind that flicker and smell faintly of lavender. And we laughed, not to prove anything, not to hide. Just because the food was warm and the chairs sturdy and the night kind. Halfway through dessert, Maureen looked up from her pie and said, "I never thought I'd be happy again." None of us answered. We didn't need to. After the guests left and the porch fell quiet, I stayed behind to blow out the candles. Evelyn joined me, carrying the last tray of empty mugs. "I thought I was done," she said softly. "With what?" "With being seen." I looked at her. "You're just getting started." She smiled, a tired one, but real. That night, I stood at the window in my room, watching the moon hang low and heavy above the rooftops. I could hear Ruth's radio through the wall, Trudy snoring faintly, someone boiling water for one last cup. This was home, not the kind I gave away, the kind I built. A few days later, a package arrived. No return address, just a simple box wrapped in brown paper. Inside, one photograph. Wyatt's drawing of me on the porch, framed in wood. And a note. "He said you still have the house. And he's right. Love, L." It didn't say sorry. It didn't need to. Because it wasn't for her. It was for him. I placed the frame on my desk. Next to Paul's photo. 2 kinds of love. One I married. One I raised. Later, I made tea and sat on the porch alone. The street was quiet. The house behind me full. I let the night wrap around me like a shawl. Not for warmth, but for rest. Tomorrow we'd paint the front door. Evelyn wanted mint green. Ruth disagreed. Said nothing on a house should be described as edible. We'd settle it with a coin toss. But tonight, there was no need to decide anything. Everything I needed had already arrived. It happened on a Sunday, the kind where the air is soft and forgets to move. We'd just finished breakfast, toast, jam, coffee, that Roland said tasted like burnt optimism. Ruth snorted so hard she dropped her spoon. Trudy was fixing the hem on Evelyn's robe with a needle so small it looked like defiance. Then the intercom buzzed. I was closest. I pressed the button. "Who is it?" Silence. Then, "It's me. Lewis." I didn't ask why. I just pressed the gate release. He came up the steps slowly, like the wood might remember his weight. He held something in his hands. A box, wrapped in a plain towel. "I don't want to interrupt," he said. "You already have," Ruth muttered from the living room. He half smiled. "Fair." I stepped outside and sat on the bench. He followed, placing the box beside me. I thought about writing, but it felt too easy. I said nothing. "I'm staying with friends now, still working nights. Wyatt's with me on weekends." Still, I said nothing. He looked down at his hands. I came to say something I never said when it mattered. I waited. I was wrong. About everything. I exhaled, quiet. I let someone else decide how I saw you. And then I acted like that was okay because I didn't raise my voice. He paused. But silence isn't neutral. I see that now. He handed me the box. Inside, my sewing kit. The one Lisa said didn't match the decor, the one she packed away without asking. I kept it, he said. I don't know why. Maybe I thought you'd want it someday. I closed the lid gently. I don't hate you, I said. I know. I just can't unlive what's already happened. He nodded. I don't want you to forgive me today, he said. I just want you to know I remember now. That, I believed. Before he left, I stood and handed him something, a blank notebook. Fill it, I said, with better choices. He swallowed hard. I will. After he walked away, Ruth joined me. Well? He came honest, I said. That's rare. We didn't speak after that. We didn't need to. That evening I lit a candle in the kitchen. Not for ceremony, just for light. I poured myself mint tea and sat by the window, notebook in hand. I opened to the back and wrote, You are not too late, not too old, not too invisible. You do not owe your silence to anyone. You get to speak. And if no one listens, build a house where they have to. Then I looked out into the porch, chipped paint, garden overgrown, women I loved arguing over garlic bread. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. If you've ever been talked over, erased, pushed to the corners of the room you built, let this be your reminder. Silence is not peace. Kindness is not debt. And being quiet to keep the family whole only works if they remember you're part of it. If you felt seen in this story, if you felt known, then know this. You are not alone, and you never were. Subscribe to Grandma's Untold Stories, because here the quiet ones speak, and the world listens.